Use relationships to multiply and divide by 10. So today we're going to use our knowledge of this place value chart to find different products or quotients of decimals and a value of 10. So 10 or 100, a power of 10. Okay, before we do that, let's remind ourselves of the patterns and relationships that we have on this place value chart. If I go from 1s to 10s, I'm multiplying by 10. 1 10 is 10 times as big as 1 1. So here is where we multiply by 10. Vice versa, if I go from hundreds to tens, I'm dividing by 10 or also multiplying by 1/10. So it goes both ways. So if I have 4 tenths and I'm multiplying by 10, let's go ahead and put 4 tenths. Here's my decimal point. The 4 would come right after that. If I multiply by 10, 4 tenths times 10, multiply by 10 would give me 4 ones. Let's go ahead and prove it with some fractions. If I have 4 tenths and I multiply by 10, 4 tenths times 10, remember this 4 tenths and this 4 tenths are equal. Let's go ahead and multiply, make that a fraction, multiply across. We get 40 tenths, also known as 4 ones. So I could prove it with my fraction knowledge. Let's go ahead and do 4 hundredths times 10. So the 4 is in the hundredths place. I'm going to multiply that by 10, which would mean that I'm in the tenths place now. 4 hundredths times 10 gives me 4 tenths. Again, let's prove it. 4 hundredths times 10. Let's make that a fraction. We get 40 hundredths. If I divided top and bottom by 10, we'd get 4 tenths, also known as 4 tenths. Let's keep going. If I have 4 thousandths times 10, so tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 4 thousandths times 10, if I multiply that by 10, I would end up with 4 hundredths. Let's try it. 4 thousandths times 10 gives me 40 thousandths, also known as 4 hundredths. If I divide top and bottom by 10, which is 4 hundredths. Proven by our fraction knowledge. So let's challenge it even more. If I had that same number of 4 thousandths, and I know that multiplying by 10 gets me to the hundredths place, what would multiplying by 100 mean? Let's see. If I multiply by 10, and then I multiply by 10 again, that's the same as multiplying by what? If I multiply by 10, multiply by 10 again, that's the same as multiplying by 100. So here, I multiply by 100, and I get to move 2 place values. Multiply by 10, which is the same as multiply by 100. So I have that 4 thousandths times 100 would give me 400 on top over 1,000, divide by 100, divide by 100, we'd get 4 tenths. 4 tenths. So let's write this down. 4 tenths times 10 gave me 4. 4 hundredths times 10 gave me 4 tenths. 4 thousandths times 10 gave me 4 hundredths. And 4 thousandths times 100 gave me 4 tenths. 4 tenths. Using our place value chart made it a lot easier for us to multiply by 10 and 100, those powers of 10. Let's go ahead and use our place value chart to solve for these quotients. So I remember that moving to the left, going this way, we multiply by 10. But going the opposite direction, we divide by 10 each place value. So if I have 6 ones, and I'm going to this time divide by 10, I would end up at 6 tenths. Let's see, 6 divided by 10 equals 6 tenths, which is 6 tenths. Very easy for us once we have our place value chart. 6 ones divided by, this time, 100. Oops, let me write 6 tenths here. 6 ones divided by 100. Well, I know that dividing by 10 gets me one place value. If I divide by 10 again, I get to 2 place values, which is the same as dividing by 100. So 6 divided by 100. Ooh, here's some work for us. Let's see. 6 divided by 100 equals 6 hundredths, which equals 6 hundredths. That's right in the correct spot. 6 hundredths. So again, okay, let's try 6 ones divided by 1,000. Well, if I divide by 10, I get to the tens place. If I divide by another 10, that gets me to the hundredths place. This is the same as dividing by 100. If I divide by 10 again, that's the same as dividing by 1,000. Let's see, 6 divided by 1,000 equals 6 thousandths, which is the same as 6 thousandths. We can very easily use our place value chart to help us out. Let's look at this next one, which is a little bit more difficult, but same idea here. We'll use our place value chart to solve for these products. 2 and 43 hundredths times 10. So we have 2 and 43 hundredths. We're going to multiply this by 10. What we're going to do is look at each place value individually and multiply it by 10. So, let's see. If I take this 2 ones and I multiply it by 10, what would I get? I would get 2 tenths. 2 tens, excuse me. If I take this 4 tenths and I multiply that part by 10, that'd give me 4 ones. And if I take this 3 hundredths and multiply by 10, I'd get 3 tenths. So my answer here is 24 and 3 tenths. Now let's check to make sure if that makes any sense at all. If I took off the decimal piece and I just looked at the whole number, 2, what's 2 times 10? 2 times 10 is 20. Am I pretty close? Yes, I am. So here when I multiplied by 10, each number went up 1 place value. Now let's look at 2 and 43 hundredths times 100. Well, we remember that this is multiplying by 10. If I multiply by 10 again, that's the same as multiplying by 100. So if I multiply 2 times 100, I get 2 hundredths. 4 tenths times 100, again, I multiply by 10, I get 4 tens. 3 hundredths multiplied by 100 gives me 3 ones. Now just to prove it to you, 3 hundredths times 100 gives me 300 over 100, which gives me 3. So here we have 243 as our answer. Let's check it again with that whole number. The 2 times 100 gives me 200. Again, I'm pretty close to that. 2 and 43 thousandths, and this time we're going to multiply by 1,000. So I multiplied by 10, multiplied by 10 again. That's the same as multiplying by 100. I'm going to multiply by 10 again, which is the same as multiplying by 1,000. So 2 times 1,000 gives me 2,000. 4 tenths times 1,000 gives me 4 hundredths. And 3 hundredths times 1,000 gives me 3 tenths. I'm going to fill that place value with a little placeholder 0. Okay, so again, I multiplied by 100. I moved 2 place values. I multiplied by 1,000. I moved 3 place values. Here I multiplied by 10 and I moved 1 place value. If you're wanting to put a comma, don't forget wherever the decimal place or point is, you would move 3 places and then a comma, 3 places, then a comma. We will use the place value chart to show these quotients. So here we have 745, and we're dividing by 10. Well, when I divide by 10, I move this way. So 7 hundredths divided by 10 gives me 7 tenths. 4 tens divided by 10 gives me 4 ones, and 5 ones divided by 10 gives me 5 tenths. So 745 divided by 10 gives me 74 and 5 tenths. If we check that, 700 divided by 10 gives me 70, so we're again pretty close to that number. We moved our place value in the opposite direction, in the smaller direction, 1 time. Here we again have 745, and we're dividing by 100. Well, if I divide by 10, that would put me here, but dividing by 100 is the same as dividing by 10 twice, right? So 700 divided by 100 is 7. 4 tens divided by 100 is 4 tenths. 5 ones divided by 100 is 5 hundredths. 5 ones divided by 100 is 5 hundredths. Okay, here again I divided by 100, and this time I moved 2 place values. That was 7 and 45 hundredths as my final quotient. Last one here, 745, and this time we're dividing by 1,000. Well, if I divide by 10, that's the same as dividing by 100. So we can divide by 10 again. That is the same as dividing by 1,000. So now I have 7 hundredths divided by 1,000 gives me 7 tenths. 4 tens divided by 1,000 gives me 4 hundredths. And 5 ones divided by 1,000 gives me 5 thousandths. Again, 5 ones divided by 1,000 gives me 5 thousandths, which is 5 thousandths. So here we go. This is, 745 thousandths. 745 thousandths. We could also write those like 745 tenths, and then take that into a mixed number, change that mixed number into the decimal, and so forth. So Anytime I have 10, whether I'm multiplying or dividing, I move one place value. Anytime I have 100, I move 2 place values. Anytime I have 1,000, I move 3 place values. Is there any way that we could remember that? Well, notice how I have 1 0 here. I have 1, 2 zeros there. I have 1, 2, 3 zeros there. If I divide, the number gets smaller. It moves to the right. If I multiply, the number gets bigger, and we move it to the left. So here we divided by 1,000, so I moved it 1, 2, 3 place values to the right, making that value smaller, because 7/10 is much smaller than 7/100. Here, I multiplied by 1,000, moving it 1, 2, 3 place values, and it got bigger, going from ones to thousands. So we can use our place value chart to help us a lot with multiplying by powers of 10, 100, 1,000, and so forth.